Gregor Johann Mendel, the father of modern genetics. Mendel was born on July 22, 1822 in Heisendorf, Austria. He didn't get the name Gregor until later in his life. Mendel was born to a humble family of farmers. He worked as a farm boy until age 11, and at this time an impressed schoolmaster named Johann recognized Mendel's unusual intelligence and enthusiasm for learning. Schreiber suggested that he attend the gymnasium in Troppau. Mendel graduated from the gymnasium 6 years later with honors. After graduation, Mendel enrolled in the Philosophical Institute of the University of Olmütz for a 2-year program in practical and theoretical philosophy and physics. He did especially well in mathematics and physics. His 2-year program took longer than 2 years to complete due to recurring bouts of depression. In 1844, at the age of 22, instead of going back to the family farm as his father wanted, Johann decided to become a monk. Mendel joined the Augustinian order at the St. Thomas Monastery in Brno. This is where he took on the name Gregor. Mendel became ordained as a priest in 1847 after rapidly ascending the ranks of priesthood, novice, subdeacon, deacon, and finally priest. In Mendel's free time, he worked diligently in his pea garden. Blending inheritance was the prevailing theory at the time. The hereditary traits of offspring were the results of diluted blending of whatever traits were present in the parents. It was also commonly accepted that over generations, a hybrid would revert to its original form. Mendel was interested in better understanding how plant hybridization worked. Mendel chose the peas in his garden, Pisum sativum, because they could be easily produced and cross-fertilized and had many distinct characters, so they were easy to phenotype. He had tall, short, round, wrinkled, green, yellow, and he noticed that when he mixed a tall plant and a short plant, the next generation were all tall. After mixing these tall plants together, he noticed the following generation had 3 tall plants and 1 short one. Why was that? Mendel's pea plant experiments were carried out over 8 years and included more than 15,000 plants, but he had finally found an answer. He had come up with 3 laws. His first law, the law of segregation, stated that during the production of gametes, the 2 copies of each hereditary factor segregate so that offspring acquire 1 factor from each parent. In his second law, the law of independent assortment, he describes how different genes independently separate from one another when reproductive cells develop. His third law, the law of dominance, states that in a heterozygote, one trait will conceal the presence of another trait of the same characteristic. Rather than both alleles contributing to a phenotype, the dominant allele will be expressed exclusively. Today we know these to be the laws of inheritance or heredity. Mendel's work with pea plants would be completed in 1863. The final analysis of the data and the preparation of the manuscript would happen in 1864. He published his paper called Experiments on Plant Hybridization in 1865. Mendel's paper had limited recognition upon its initial publication. It was mentioned in several publications over the next 34 years, but its main thrust was never understood until later, 16 years after Mendel's death, in what is commonly referred to as the rediscovery. In the 1900s, botanists, biologists, and geneticists began experimenting on hybridization similar to what Mendel did, many of which claimed they had not known of Mendel's work while doing their own experiments. In Great Britain, biologist William Bateson became the leading proponent of Mendel's theory. Around him gathered an enthusiastic band of followers. However, Darwinian evolution was assumed to be based on the selection of small, blending variations, whereas Mendel worked with clearly non-blending variations. Bateson soon found that championing Mendel aroused opposition from Darwinians. He and his supporters were called Mendelians, and their work was considered irrelevant to evolution. It took some 3 decades before the Mendelian theory was sufficiently developed to find its rightful place in the evolutionary theory. As the architect of genetic experimental and statistical analysis, Mendel remains the acknowledged father of genetics. By the end of his life, Gregor Mendel had been a farmer, scholar, monk, teacher, and scientist. He had one of the greatest discoveries in scientific history that has led to a better understanding of modern genetics. Gregor Johann Mendel died on January 6, 1884 at the age of 61. He was laid to rest in the monastery's burial plot. The foundation of the greenhouse where he carried some of his experiments can still be seen today at the St. Thomas Monastery.